We continue our Pride Month spotlight on families in the queer community in El Paso. Our guests today are Melissa Urenda and her child, Paulie. We talked to them about the fabric of their family, both before and after Paul came out as transgender.
Tell us how you identify.
I identify as they, them, she, her, and a non-binary trans femme individual.
Going right into it, Melissa, I wanted to get an understanding of how you first learned or suspected of Paul's questions about sexuality and identity. What was your first clue?
Well, first I have to confess that I was a helicopter mom. So I was constantly monitoring text messages and whereabouts, and we had GPS trackers back then. I probably would have put one on, Paul. So it was through going through one of the text messages that I saw a message to a boy, and I don't remember the context, but it was something like "I love you" or something romantic. So that's when I first brought it up to Paul, and I questioned them about it.
How did that go? I mean, well, Paul, I guess you would be the one to answer this. Obviously, if your mother asked without you volunteering the information at first, that kind of probably put you in a weird space. How did you deal with that? What were your feelings at that time?
Well, I always say that rather than coming out of the closet, my mother pushed me out of the closet. But I'm thankful for that, honestly, because I consider myself an introverted person, a very private person, and that's a difficult conversation to have with a parent. This was, of course, me coming out as a gay man back in the day, but by establishing that communication with me, my mom has become someone I've been able to trust in and confide in. So I would say, as far as becoming or coming out as trans, that happened a lot more naturally. It was when I was living with my family, and I think it was just more of a conversation. I told my mom I wanted to start taking estrogen, start HRT, and she was one of the first people I told because I was unsure, and I definitely looked to her for guidance.
And what guidance did you give?
I was, of course, as a mother, and the fact that we have a big cancer history in our family, I was concerned about the estrogen because I personally opted not to, just because of the cancer history. So that was like my first concern. So my concerns were more medical than social, one thing going back to when Paul and I first had the conversation after the text message, Paul initially was, okay, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm bi. So I do take pride in, even though I did push Paul out of the closet, I kept that. I kept it from everybody, from my husband, from my children, because I wanted that to be Paul's choice when to tell siblings and father. And so I said, figure it out. Whatever you do, figure it out. And then I'll support you. So I let Paul navigate through that to see what they felt comfortable with. So when Paul finally, and I saw them struggle through questioning, and then maybe bisexual, and then gay, and then finally when this conversation happened, I thought, okay, I can see that. And now that we've gone through the journey, it's been about 2 years, maybe.
Yeah, about 2 years.
I see Paul finally comfortable in their skin, and I never saw that while they were struggling as a teenager and questioning.
That's a unique perspective that I think only a mother could provide, because, there's such intense love for your child, and you kind of find that when they're not being their true self, when they hit across what is their true self, it kind of sheds a light on different things. How old were you, Paul?
When I came out as trans?
Yeah.
I was 26, I believe. Definitely questioning when I was 25, and even prior to that, the idea of being non-binary really appealed to me, especially when I lived in Austin for about 5 years. It's a very liberal place. I was able to explore both my sexuality and gender identity. But then I realized that presenting more feminine and being a feminine individual is what really made me comfortable just in everyday life. And I think it was over the pandemic I actually attribute there's the term egg when you are questioning whether you might be trans or not, and then there's a moment where you hatch. And I honestly attribute that hatching moment to my mom, because one day she just told me that I had a woman's soul, and that no one had ever told me that before. And when I heard that, it very much resonated with me, and I was like, that feels right. And I think that was kind of the moment where I decided to do things that would push me towards the feminine side of my gender identity, whether that was laser hair removal and then eventually starting HRT. So.
And Paul, how much time had passed when you found Melissa the text to another boy, and he was and Paul was at that time kind of questioning his sexuality, and let's be clear, there's a big difference between sexuality and gender identity, and so we understand that, and we're still struggling to understand that because not everybody does, and I think it's one of those kind of murky areas that we don't really know how to navigate. I can only say that I'm amazed at families that have been able to do that successfully. So how much time had passed from that time to where you really started to affirm your gender?
It's probably like a decade.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's right. It is a total process. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I think one of the things that happens in the public world, you know, people make it seem like all of a sudden everybody's, you know, turning trans, or everybody's, pushing against, pushing against gender norms, and it's a trend, but it's not easy, and it's a long process, and it's not something that can be done overnight. But it does help to have a supportive family. So we know Melissa's point of view, and in fact, for her to even provide that seed and say, you have a woman's soul, you know, that's who you are, and for you to really identify with that was just kind of, I mean, talk about a unique and wonderful experience. How did the rest of the family react?
I am super grateful and blessed to have extremely supportive siblings that are also members of the queer community. My sister has plenty of LGBTQ plus friends, and she's been one of my biggest advocates for sure. She's the one that's she's like the pronoun police, and she's been making sure to get my family on board with just gendering me correctly, but also just, I always know I have a an advocate and ally in her, so I'm really grateful for my siblings. I'm also, my dad took longer to come around, specifically with me being gay. When I came out as gay, that was more of a journey for him as far as coming to accept that about me. But today I can say I'm proud of him for being really understanding with my new journey as a trans individual. He's been very supportive, and I don't feel judgment from him as in the way that I did when I first came out as a gay man, and that's all that really matters to me as far as like what I want out of my immediate family. So
And I wondered also too with your extended family, with cousins and aunts and uncles and those kinds of things. How did that go, and how were the conversations with that? And I wanted to ask both you and your mother, with Melissa, with how did those conversations go with, say, before family parties and things
right,
like that.
Your conversation with the tias, because inevitably there's always a tia with an opinion.
I'm sure the first Thanksgiving was probably a challenge. Yeah.
Well, actually, I guess we have two sides. I have my side and then my husband's side, and my side's very liberal. Mm-hmm. And we have gay members in that side of the family as well, and everything was very accepting. I had a hard time with my mother-in-law, only because I always felt that should be my husband's place to tell his mother, this is what's going on. But my husband's very quiet. He doesn't really talk a lot. And so I wanted that conversation to be between my husband and his mom. So for the longest time, on my husband's side of the family, cousins, grandparents, aunts, uncles, it was never really discussed. I'm sure they noticed things, but nothing was ever, said until one day my mother-in-law made a comment about Paul and referring to him as as gay. And I was like, oh my God, you know? And then she's like, well, yeah, one time I was at your family's house and I overheard them talking about it, joking. So my family actually outed Paul to my husband's family unknowingly because they were just talking about, I don't know what it was, something crazy. And so she overheard that, and then that's when she started realizing it. But I mean, the moment that Paul, I guess, came out to my husband's side of the family, I mean, it was pure acceptance.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes, I mean, Paul has been blessed on both sides of the family, and we also have queer family members on my husband's side, as far as Paul has cousins as well. So, like I said, it's been like a love fest. I think Paul's been very blessed that we've never had any backlash from any family member.
You know, I know Izzy is involved with the Borderland Rainbow Center, and there's always a lot of at-risk youth, particularly with transgender youth, that do get kicked out of their families because of simply who they are or what they want to do with their life. But for the most part, in El Paso, we have talked about this in other episodes, where the family is such a core group in El Paso. I mean, it is one of the building blocks of this community. Its family is always, and not just the core, the immediate family, but the extended family. And so it seems like almost every family has, and it's just logical that they would have, you know, trans and gay and bisexual and everything in between within their family, making that acceptance a little bit easier, which is the goal. And although not everybody has that. So it's wonderful to hear you all, how blessed that you all are. And Paul, particularly you on your journey, you know, to be able to have a supportive family, because not all of that is the case. What advice would you have for someone that's questioning or going through a similar experience that may not have that support?
I would say find people who are similar as far as experiencing the same types of questions about their gender, because not only just because someone is transgender doesn't mean they have the same experience. There's such a wide breadth of experiences, and even when I was questioning, I found great community in the people here that I met that were part of the LGBT plus community, but not in just company, but also just in conversation. They were able to really help me figure out how I wanted to be in this world, how I wanted to present, how I wanted people to perceive me. And that comfort that you find through external communities translates to comfort you have in like your everyday life, even if like you don't have the greatest support system within your immediate family.
You know, we've done a couple of episodes now talking about kind of adopted families. There's a phrase, there's a biological and logical family. And the logical family are the people that you're more aligned to, both, you know, in value and in experience. And so those seem to always be available to people that if they go out and seek that kind of support. And so that's good advice, is that even if your biological family is not the most supportive, there are groups of people that will be.
And Melissa, I also had a question for you, and kind of in the same vein, you know, advice for parents whose children or who suspect that their children may be going through identity struggles. What kinds of advice would you offer them, seeing as how you came to Paul, how you brought the subject up? What kind of advice would you give to a parent?
Well, I think, love and communication are key. You know, never lose that communication. Never be afraid to approach your child, because sometimes, like Paul said, maybe they're waiting for the question because they can't initiate it themselves. And then just, you know, unconditional love. I mean, I see so much, like Paul mentioned, my daughter has so many friends that are part of the queer community, and they don't feel comfortable in their homes. You know, they come to our house and I provide a safe space for them, a place for them to be themselves. And I wish that they could have that same experience at their home, you know. So, you know, it's sad that there are families that aren't accepting. So, but I think it's important that children find a place where they feel safe, whether it's biological or, like you said, logical families.
Right.
Sure. And speaking to a parent who might be listening, or whose child will bring them this, you know, podcast and say, you know, what would you tell a parent about accepting your child and understanding what your child is, or seeking to understand what your child is going through? What kinds of things would have helped you?
I think one thing that even I struggled with, you know, and I consider myself, you know, second generation ally. I mean, I've always been an ally to the queer community, but I still struggle because I think as a parent, we have dreams for our children. We see a life for them, and the life is similar to our own life, and so it's letting go of your expectations and giving it to them, like it's their life. And I had to learn that with Paul. You know, I had to let go of what I saw for Paul and embrace what Paul saw for Paul.
That's great parenting advice for every parent, no matter what their child is going through. I mean, I think that that's a big part of becoming that kind of parent, particularly to adult children, is that knowing when to let go and let them bloom to whatever they're going to become. We have enjoyed our talk, this little snapshot into your family, and we know that it's a beautiful and loving family, and we wish you all well, continued success. Paul, tell me a little bit. I think Melissa had mentioned that you are studying, or you were seeking education to help future generations. Is that right, or something, or did I get that?
Yeah, I am interested in the healthcare system, just after experiencing it myself, especially finding access to care and resources. So I do plan to apply for a program at UT Austin called Design in Health. It's a master's program that is about designing healthcare systems, and I would like to help with that cause and creating healthcare systems that are inclusive for all types of people.
I can think of no better way to help spread that kind of understanding and compassion for everyone. Especially in Texas, yeah. Again, thank you both for sharing your story with us, and happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Thank you. Happy Pride.
We'd love to hear from you. Email us at feedback@queeronda.com or visit our website and leave a comment. www.queeronda.com. That's www.queeronda.com.
Join us every Saturday during Pride Month as our spotlight on queer families continues.
For a list of all Pride events during the month of June, visit queeronda.com.